Marin decided to humiliate me on my 33rd birthday over a $50 bar tab. She laughed, calling it a rescue, while our friends watched me freeze in shame. I didn't scream or flip the table. I just went quiet. Because while Marin was busy performing generosity, I finally looked at the numbers. She hadn't saved me $50. She had slowly siphoned $480,000 of my life, and I was going to take it all back. The water glasses at the Ironwood were heavy, the kind with thick, cut crystal bottoms that left damp rings on the white tablecloths. I found myself staring at one of those rings, tracing the condensation with my thumbnail, trying to convince myself that 33 felt different from 32. It did not. It felt exactly the same, which was to say, it felt like I was running on a treadmill that had been set 2 speeds too high for the last 5 years. I had chosen the restaurant specifically because it was quiet. It was tucked away in the older part of Dawson Harbor, where the cobblestones ruined high heels and the fog rolled off the water in thick, gray ribbons. I worked in logistics. My days were spent staring at shipping manifests, arguing with dispatchers in 3 different time zones, and solving problems that usually involved someone else's incompetence. I managed the flow of goods for a mid-sized company that moved everything from industrial coolant to high-end furniture. My life was loud. My life was urgent. For my birthday, all I wanted was a glass of Pinot Noir, a steak I didn't have to cook, and a conversation that didn't involve a supply chain crisis. David, sitting across from me, seemed to understand the assignment. He was steady. That was the word everyone used for him, usually as a backhanded compliment, but I loved it. He was a structural engineer, and he looked at life the way he looked at a suspension bridge, as something to be maintained and reinforced. "Happy birthday, Stell," he said, sliding a small, simply wrapped box across the table. "I told the waiter we are in no rush. I know you had a hell of a week with the distribution center." I exhaled, feeling my shoulders drop about 2 inches. It was a nightmare. We had 3 trucks broke down in the pass, and the client was screaming about penalties. I just want to sit here and not make a single decision for 2 hours. That was the plan. It was a good plan. There were 6 of us at the table. Me, David, 2 of my friends from college, and a couple from David's firm. It was manageable, intimate. Then the front door of the restaurant swung open, letting in a gust of cold harbor air and the distinct, clattering energy of my sister. Marin did not just enter rooms, she annexed them. She was 3 years older than me, but she had an energy that made her seem simultaneously younger and infinitely more exhausted. She was wearing a coat that looked like it cost 3 months of my rent, beige cashmere that caught the dim restaurant light. She was waving before she even saw us, broadcasting a performance of delight to an audience of strangers. "Sorry. Oh God. I am so sorry. The traffic on the bridge was absolute murder," she announced, her voice pitching just loud enough to turn heads 3 tables away. She swept toward our table, bringing a cloud of expensive floral perfume with her. The waiter, a young man who had been perfectly attentive to me, immediately straightened up as Marin approached. She didn't go to the empty chair at the end of the table. Instead, she squeezed in between David and me, placing her oversized designer handbag directly in the center of the table, effectively blocking my view of my own birthday cake candle. "Happy birthday to the baby," she squealed, leaning over to kiss my cheek. Her lips were cold. She smelled like white wine and mints. "Hi, Marin," I said, shifting my chair to make room for her hips. "You made it. I wouldn't miss it. I literally had to fire a caterer 20 minutes ago. Absolute disaster. You cannot imagine. But I told them, my little sister is turning 33, and if I am not there, she will sulk for a decade." She laughed, a bright, tinkling sound. "I don't sulk," I said. But the protest died in my throat. It was already too late. Marin had taken the temperature of the table and decided it was too low. She signaled the waiter with a snap of her fingers that was somehow both charming and imperious. "We need champagne, whatever you have that is coldest and driest, and bring another menu. I am starving. I haven't eaten since breakfast. The sacrifices we make for the family business, right?" She winked at David's coworker, a man she had never met, And he smiled back. Charmed. That was Marin's gift. She could make you feel like a co-conspirator in a grand, chaotic adventure just by making eye contact. For the next hour, the dinner was no longer my birthday celebration. It was the Marin show. She told stories about her event planning company, Hale Event Collective, spinning tales of bridezillas and corporate meltdowns that had the whole table laughing. She was funny. I had to give her that. She had a way of recounting a story where she was always the beleaguered hero, saving the day with wit and grace. I sat there, cutting my steak into small, precise squares, listening to her talk. I was the operations manager. I was the one who actually solved problems for a living. But when I talked about work, it sounded like work. When Marin talked about work, it sounded like a Netflix drama. Slowly, I felt myself receding. It was a familiar sensation, like being washed out to sea by a gentle but persistent tide. Marin physically took up space. Her gestures were wide. Her elbows were on the table. Her coat was draped over the back of my chair because she said hers was too wobbly. I found myself nodding, smiling tightly, and checking the time on my phone under the table. Then came the bill. I had arranged it beforehand. I had given the restaurant a credit card and a gift card I had received as a bonus from my company. I wanted to pay. I wanted to treat my friends. It was a point of pride for me. I made good money, not Marin money, or at least, not the kind of money Marin pretended to have, but solid, reliable money. The waiter returned with the black folder and approached me. He looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I apologize," he said. His voice lowered. "We ran the gift card, but there is a remaining balance. The machine is having trouble with the chip on your main card. It keeps declining." I felt the heat rise up my neck. I knew there was money in that account. I had checked it that morning. I had transferred $2,000 specifically for this week. "That doesn't make sense," I said, reaching for my purse. "Let me give you a different one." Marin snatched the folder from the waiter's hand before I could even unzip my bag. "Oh, stop it," she said loudly. She flipped the folder open and scanned the receipt. Her eyebrows shot up. $50? You are holding up the table over a $50 balance? "I'm not holding up the table," I said, my voice tight. "My card chip is just worn out. I have another one." Marin laughed, looking around the table. Listen to her, always the accountant, trying to balance the books to the penny. "Put it away." "Stella." She pulled a sleek metal card from her wallet and slapped it onto the table. It made a sharp, authoritative clatter. "Put the 50 on this," she told the waiter, "and add a 20% tip on the whole bill. My sister forgets that people need to make a living sometimes." The table went silent for a beat. The joke hung in the air, curdled and sour. "I don't forget people need to make a living," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. "I just wanted to pay for my own birthday dinner." Marin reached over and patted my hand. Her palm was clammy. "Don't be sensitive. Stell, it is $50. Consider it my gift. I know things have been tight for you lately with the car repairs and everything." I froze. I hadn't told her about my car repairs. I hadn't told anyone about the car repairs except my mechanic and, well, I must have mentioned it to her in passing. But the way she said it, tight, implied a struggle that didn't exist. I had paid for the transmission fix in cash. David shifted in his seat. He cleared his throat. "Stella actually just got a raise. Marin, she's doing great. And the dinner was her treat." Marin waved a hand dismissively, smiling at David like he was a cute child interrupting the adults. We know. Stella is a worker bee, but family carries family, right? That is the Hale motto. I have got her back. I always have. Since we were kids, I have been making sure she doesn't trip over her own shoelaces." She looked around the table, inviting everyone to join in the benevolent narrative of Marin, the protector. "She needs help with the little things sometimes," Marin added, winking at my college friend. "You know how she gets, overwhelmed by the details." Everyone chuckled. It was a nervous, polite chuckle, the kind you give when you want to move past an awkward moment. But to me, it sounded like a gavel banging down. Overwhelmed by details, I managed international freight logistics. I organized shipping lanes for hazardous materials. But here, in Marin's orbit, I was the little sister who couldn't pay a $50 bar tab. I smiled. It was a terrible, rictus smile that felt like it might crack the enamel on my teeth. Thanks. Marin, I said. That's the spirit, she cheered, signaling for the waiter to take her card. Now, who wants to go to that new jazz club on 4th? My treat. The dinner broke up shortly after that. I declined the jazz club. I told them I had a headache, which wasn't a lie. The pressure behind my eyes was throbbing in time with my heartbeat. I went to the restroom while David waited for the valet. I needed a moment to breathe, to splash cold water on my face and wash off the feeling of Marin's pity. I was in the stall, locking the door. When I heard the main door open, the distinct click of Marin's heels echoed on the tile. She was talking to someone, one of David's coworkers, a woman named Jessica. Oh, I know, Marin was saying, her voice echoing in the tiled space. It is sweet that she tries, really, but honestly, it is exhausting sometimes. You are a good sister to cover for her, Jessica said. It was awkward when her card declined. Marin sighed. A long, tragic sound. She couldn't even pay $50. I mean, between you and me? I handle her finances sometimes. I have to. After Dad died, she just spiraled. She makes decent money, but she just spends it on nonsense and then panics. I basically keep her afloat. I stood there in the stall, my hand hovering over the latch. The air in the bathroom smelled of lavender and bleach. I felt a physical blow to my stomach, sharp and nauseating. She keeps me afloat? I waited until they left. I waited until I heard the door hiss shut. Then I walked out to the sink. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked like a woman who let things happen to her. I walked out of the restaurant and found David waiting with the car. He looked concerned. You okay? He asked as I got in. She was a lot tonight. Even for Marin. I'm fine. I lied. I just want to go home. The drive back to my apartment was blurred by streetlights and rain. David played the radio low. Sensing I didn't want to talk, but my mind was screaming. It wasn't the embarrassment. I could handle embarrassment. It was the specific texture of the lie. I handle her finances. Why did that sting so much? Because it was close to the truth. I stared out the window at the passing storefronts of Dawson Harbor. Over the last 5 years, since our father had passed away from a sudden heart attack, Marin and I had been enmeshed. I had been grieving, drowning in a depression I couldn't shake, and Marin had stepped in. She had helped with the estate, she had helped with the paperwork, and she had asked for help, too. I started replaying the last 5 years, not as a sister, but as an operations manager. I stripped away the emotion and looked at the transactions. Can you spot me for the vendor deposit? The bank transfer is stuck. I need a quick bridge loan for the catering hall. Just until Monday. Sign this for me. Stell, it's just a formality for Mom's insurance. Quick transfers, temporary holds, paperwork favors. I had always said yes, because she was my big sister. Because she was the successful one, the one with the glamorous business, and I was just the logistics manager with the steady paycheck. If Marin Hale needed money, it was just a cash flow hiccup. If Stella Wright needed money, it was a crisis. But I didn't need money. I never needed money. So why did I feel broke? I had a good salary. I lived in a modest apartment. I drove a 4-year-old car. Where was my money going? When we got to my apartment, I kissed David goodnight at the door. I'm going to crash. I told him, thank you for the dinner. I love the earrings. He looked at me, searching my face. Don't let her get to you. Stella, she's insecure. She has to be the biggest person in the room. I know. I said, I'll call you tomorrow. I locked the door, took off my heels, and didn't go to bed. I went to my dining table and opened my laptop. I poured myself a glass of water and sat down. The apartment was silent. The only light came from the street lamp outside and the glow of my screen. I navigated to my documents folder. I found a subfolder labeled tax stuff. It was a digital junk drawer. I tossed everything in there. Receipts, PDFs, scanned forms, intending to organize it later. Later never came. I started clicking. October 2021. A screenshot of a text message from Marin. Transferring 4K back to you on twos. TX for the help. I frowned. I searched my bank statements for a deposit of $4,000 in October 2021. There was nothing. There was a transfer out to Marin Hale, but no transfer in. I kept clicking. January 2022. A promissory note for $15,000 for Hale Event Collective Expansion. It was a simple Word document. There was no signature at the bottom. I remembered this. She had called me crying, saying her payroll system had crashed and she needed to pay her staff. I had wired the money from my savings. I checked my records. She had paid back $2,000 in March. Then nothing. I opened a spreadsheet. I typed date in column A, amount in column B, reason in column C, and status in column D. I worked for 3 hours. My eyes burned. The silence in the apartment grew heavy, pressing against my eardrums. It wasn't just loans. It was shared accounts. When Dad died, we had set up a joint account to handle Mom's expenses. I put money in every month. Marin was supposed to put money in every month. I pulled the history for that account. Deposit, Stella Wright, $600. Deposit, Stella Wright, $600. Deposit, Stella Wright, $600. Where were Marin's deposits? I scrolled back 2 years. I found 3 deposits from Marin. 3 in 2 years. But the withdrawals were constant. Withdrawal, cash, $200. Withdrawal, Target, $145. Withdrawal, Lark Linen Comms, $1,500. Lark Linen? Who was that? It sounded like a PR firm. Why was my mother's expense account paying a PR firm? I leaned back in my chair, my hands trembling. This wasn't just a sister borrowing $20. This was a pattern. This was a structure. I looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m. I closed the laptop, but I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling the humiliation of the restaurant burn in my chest. She couldn't even pay $50. She was right. I couldn't pay $50 because she had my money. I woke up at 7. I didn't go to work. I called in sick. I never called in sick. I made coffee, black, and sat back down at the computer. I called the bank. I need a full transaction history for all accounts under my name or associated with my social security number for the last 5 years. I told the representative, and I need copies of all wire transfer authorizations. It will take a few hours to generate that much data. Ma'am, the voice said, we can upload it to your secure message center. Do it, I said. While I waited, I didn't pace. I didn't cry. I went into logistics mode. I was managing a crisis. The commodity was my future. The breakage was my trust. When the notification pinged on my phone at 10 o'clock, I opened the file. It was a PDF, hundreds of pages long. I started at the summary page. I looked at the total outflows to accounts linked to Marin Hale or Hale Event Collective. My breath hitched. I blinked. Sure, I was misreading the comma placement. The number wasn't 10,000. It wasn't 50,000. Between direct loans, covered expenses, temporary transfers, and withdrawals from the joint account, the total was staggering. But there was something else. I scrolled through the wire transfers. I was looking for the big ones, the ones I had signed for when I was in the fog of grief. August 14th, 2023. A wire transfer for $25,000. I remembered this one. Marin had told me it was for a tax lien on Mom's house. She said it was an emergency, that the county was going to seize the property if we didn't pay immediately. I had panicked. I had liquidated a mutual fund. I looked at the memo line on the bank's official record. It didn't say county tax assessor. It said, Cedar Ridge Development Escrow, REFSHA Unit 404. I stared at the words. Cedar Ridge. I knew that name. It was a massive luxury redevelopment project on the north side of Dawson Harbor. Condos, retail, high-end living. It had nothing to do with Mom's taxes. My sister hadn't saved the family home. She had used my money to put a down payment on a piece of real estate I didn't know existed. I felt a coldness settle over me, a chilling clarity that wiped away the shame from the night before. The humiliation of the $50 evaporated. replaced by something much harder, much sharper. Marin thought I was the little sister who couldn't handle details. She thought I was the one who needed to be carried. She thought I was safe to humiliate because I would never fight back. I opened a new notebook. I picked up a pen. Rule number 1. No confrontation. Not yet. If I screamed at her, she would gaslight me. She would say it was a misunderstanding, a placeholder, a complex financial maneuver I didn't understand. She would spin the narrative just like she did at dinner. No, I needed more than a wire memo. I needed the whole map. I wrote down the number from the spreadsheet, the preliminary total of what I believed she had taken, $480,000. It was a house. It was a retirement. It was my life. I looked at the number, and for the first time in 24 hours, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like an operations manager looking at a broken supply chain. I wasn't going to ask for it back. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to audit her life, and I was going to repossess mine, one transaction at a time. I closed the laptop, picked up my phone, and sent Marin a text. Thanks again for last night. You were right about the $50. I need to get better at managing my money. Let's do lunch soon. I hit send. The lie tasted sweet. It was the first step in a very long game, and I had just made the opening move. My mother's house always smelled the same on Sundays. Like fabric softener and cinnamon rolls, it was a comforting, suffocating scent that instantly reverted me to being 12 years old. I parked my sedan behind Marin's gleaming white SUV, which was taking up 2 spots in the driveway, and took a deep breath. This was the first test. I walked into the kitchen, and the scene was exactly as I expected. My mother, wearing her floral apron, was at the stove flipping pancakes. Marin was sitting at the island, holding a mug of coffee with both hands, looking like the centerpiece of a catalog shoot. "There she is," Marin announced, her voice bright and unbothered. "The birthday girl survives another week. Hi, Mom. Hi, Marin," I said. I kept my voice level. I placed a carton of orange juice on the counter. My mother turned and beamed at me. "Happy Sunday. Honey, Marin was just telling me about that restaurant you went to. She said the service was a little chaotic." I looked at Marin. She blew on her coffee, her eyes wide and innocent over the rim. It was fine. "Mom," I said, taking a seat on a stool 2 feet away from my sister. "Just a mix-up with the bill." "Oh, don't worry about it," Marin said, waving a manicured hand. "I told Mom not to fret. I took care of it. That is what big sisters are for, right? Keeping the wheels on the bus." She reached out and squeezed my forearm. It was a gesture of dominance disguised as affection. A week ago, I would have smiled and thanked her. Today, I felt the heat of her fingers through my sweater and thought about the $480,000. I didn't pull away. I didn't flinch. I just watched her. "So, Marin," I said, keeping my tone casual, almost bored. "I was reading about that new development downtown, the one by the waterfront. Cedar Ridge?" Marin's mug paused halfway to her mouth. It was a micro-movement, a hesitation that lasted maybe half a second. Her eyes flicked to the left, then back to me. "Cedar Ridge?" she asked. "What about it?" "It sounds huge," I said, grabbing a napkin and smoothing it out on the counter. "Mixed use, luxury condos. I heard they are taking deposits for the pre-construction units. Do you know anything about it? You know everyone in town." Marin took a sip of her coffee. She swallowed, and I saw the muscles in her throat work a little harder than necessary. "I have heard of it," she said dismissively. "It is going to be a mess. Overpriced. I wouldn't touch it." "Why? You aren't thinking of moving, are you? You know you can't afford that kind of square footage." "Stella." I watched her pupils. They were pinned. "No," I said, just curious. "I saw a flyer." "Well, ignore it," Marin said, her voice sharpening. "It is a money pit. Besides, I think the developers are having zoning issues. Stick to your apartment. It is cozy." She turned back to Mom. "Mom, remind me to look at your iPad later. I think your cloud settings are wrong again." She changed the subject with the grace of a bulldozer, but I had seen it. The denial was too fast. The critique was too specific. She wasn't just aware of Cedar Ridge. She was defensive about it. I ate my pancakes. I listened to Marin talk about her upcoming schedule, her charity work, her exhaustion. I played the part of the quiet, listening sister. But under the table, my hands were clenched in my lap. She was lying. She was lying in our mother's kitchen, eating our mother's food, while holding a stake in a property bought with my money. The next day, on my lunch break, I sat in my car in the parking lot of my office building. The rain was drumming on the roof, isolating me from the rest of the world. I had a notebook on the passenger seat and a phone number I had found on a legal aid website for Kingsland County. I dialed. Consumer Protection. This is Sarah. Hi. I said, I have a general question. I am trying to understand how someone could access my bank accounts without being a joint owner. The woman on the line sighed. The sound of someone who had heard this story 1,000 times. Are you talking about fraud, ma'am? Or authorized access? I don't know. I admitted, I am trying to figure that out. If a family member was helping me with paperwork years ago, is there a way they could stay attached to the account without my name being removed? There are a few ways, she said. Power of attorney is the big one, but that usually expires or has specific limits. Then there is the authorized user status on credit lines. But for bank accounts, check for a trusted contact designation or a convenience signer arrangement. Convenience signer? I asked, writing the term down. It is common with elderly parents, or sometimes between siblings if one is incapacitated. She explained. It allows a second person to sign checks and make transfers to help manage the account, but they don't legally own the money. The problem is, banks don't always audit those forms very often. If you signed one 5 years ago, it might still be active. I thanked her and hung up. A convenience signer. I closed my eyes. After Dad died, I had been a wreck. I had spent 3 months in a fog of grief, barely able to get out of bed. Marin had brought me stacks of papers. Just sign here. Stell. This is to pay the funeral home. This is for the estate taxes. This is so I can pick up your groceries. I had signed everything. I hadn't read a single line. I put the car in gear and drove back to work, but my mind was already moving to the next step. I needed a professional. I couldn't do this with Google and a notebook. 2 days later, I took a half-day of vacation and drove to a small, brick office building on the edge of town. The sign on the door said, Henderson Financial Counseling. No fancy logo, no glass walls, just a beige waiting room and a man named Mr. Henderson who looked like a high school geography teacher. He wore a sweater vest and bifocals. He shook my hand with a grip that was dry and firm. I am not a lawyer. Ms. Wright, he said, sitting down behind a desk cluttered with manila folders. And I am not a forensic accountant. Though I work with them, I help people organize their financial reality. You said on the phone you have some discrepancies? I placed my laptop on his desk and opened the spreadsheet I had been building. It is more than discrepancies, I said. I think my sister has been moving money out of my accounts for 5 years. I think she is disguising them as reimbursements and loans. Mr. Henderson didn't gasp. He didn't look shocked. He just adjusted his glasses and pulled the laptop closer. Show me, he said. I walked him through the ledger. I showed him the Cedar Ridge wire. I showed him the transfers to Marin that matched the dates of my emergencies. He hummed quietly as he scrolled. Here is what I am seeing, he said, pointing to a cluster of transactions from 2 years ago. You see these? $500 here, $300 there, all going to an account ending in 4490. Yes, I said. That is her personal checking. She said she needed cash for vendor deposits and would pay me back. But look at the inflow. Mr. Henderson said. He tapped a different column. 2 days after you send her $300, you get a deposit for $300 from your joint account with your mother. I stared at the screen. I hadn't noticed that. She is using pass-through payments, he said. She borrows from you, then pays you back with your own money from a different pot. The joint account. To you, it looks like a repayment. But the net result is that the joint account drains, and her personal account stays flush. She is cycling the debt, so you never feel the full hit at once. My stomach turned. It was a shell game. And this? I asked, pointing to a recurring payment I had found the night before. Larkin Linen Communications. It is coming out of an old savings account I barely check. It is $2,000 a month for the last year. Mr. Henderson clicked on the transaction details. It is an automatic debit, he said, authorized via ACH, Larkin Linen. That sounds like a boutique agency. Marketing? I nodded. Marin talks about them. They handle PR for high-end brands. Why am I paying them? Because someone gave them your routing number, he said simply. Ms. Right. You need to stop thinking of these as mistakes. These are subscriptions to a lifestyle you are not living. He leaned back in his chair. You have two choices. You can go to the police right now. This is theft. You have enough here for an investigation. I shook my head. No police. I said, not yet. If I go to the police, she will spin it. She will say I agreed to it. She will say I'm confused. Just like she tells everyone else. I need it to be undeniable. I need to close the trap before I snap it shut. Mr. Henderson looked at me for a long moment. He seemed to assess the set of my jaw, the lack of tears in my eyes. Then we need to categorize, he said. We are going to build 3 buckets: theft, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. We will sort every single penny into one of those buckets. When you are done, you won't just have a spreadsheet, you will have an indictment. The following week, I had to put on a dress and smile. It was the annual Women of Dawson Harbor luncheon. Marin was on the host committee. I had bought a ticket months ago because Marin had guilt-tripped me into it. Support your sister, Stella. It looks bad if my own family isn't there. The venue was a hotel ballroom that smelled of roasted chicken and expensive perfume. Round tables were draped in satin. Centerpieces of white hydrangeas towered over the place settings. I found my table, which was near the back, far away from the dais where Marin sat. She looked radiant in a cream-colored suit. Laughing with the mayor's wife, every few minutes, someone would approach her, and she would clasp their hands, nodding with deep, performative empathy. She was the queen of this room. She was the successful business owner, the philanthropist, the pillar of the community, and I was paying for her PR firm. The realization hit me as I picked at my salad. Larkin Linen Communications. They were the ones who got her these placements. They were the ones who wrote the press releases about Hale Event Collective's record-breaking year. I was literally funding the applause she was basking in. Stella. I looked up. A woman named Jillian was standing over me. She was an old friend of Marin's, someone I had known since high school. She was holding a glass of Chardonnay and looked slightly flushed. Hi, Jillian, I said. Good to see you. I'm so glad you made it, she said, leaning in too close. Marin said you might not be up for it. I paused, my fork hovering over a piece of cucumber. Why wouldn't I be up for it? I asked. Jillian made a vague, sympathetic face. You know, with everything going on, the family trust stuff? My blood went cold. The family trust stuff, I repeated, keeping my voice deadpan. Yeah, Jillian said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Marin mentioned she has been having to manage a lot of the legal headache for you. It must be so stressful, dealing with a contested will. I just wanted to say, you are brave for being here. Most people would just hide under the covers. I stared at her. There was no contested will. There was no family trust. Our father had left a simple life insurance policy and the house to Mom. That was it. Marin had invented a legal crisis to explain why she was controlling my money. I took a slow breath. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to walk to the stage, grab the microphone, and tell the 300 women in the room that Marin Hale was a liar who stole from her own sister to pay for her cream-colored suit. But I didn't. That was what the old Stella would have done. Gotten emotional, looked crazy, and played right into Marin's narrative. See? Poor Stella. She is unstable. Instead, I took a sip of my iced tea. Marin takes on a lot of burdens, I said calmly. She has a very active imagination for solutions. Jillian nodded. Missing the subtext entirely. She is a saint, Jillian said. Anyway, enjoy the chicken. I watched Jillian walk away. I looked at Marin on the stage. She was accepting an award now. The presenter was talking about Marin's selfless dedication to the growth of Dawson Harbor. I clapped. I clapped until my palms stung. Enjoy it. Marin, I thought, this is the most expensive lunch you will ever have. I left the luncheon early. I drove straight home and locked the door. The apartment felt different now. It wasn't just a home. It was a command center. I went to my desk and initiated the lockdown. It had to be fast, and it had to be quiet. I logged into my primary bank portal. I changed the password to a randomized string of 20 characters. I set up two-factor authentication to an app on my phone, not just a text message that could be intercepted if someone cloned a SIM card. I went to the settings menu. Alerts. I set a notification for every transaction over 1 cent, every withdrawal, every login attempt, every profile change. Then I did the hard part. I called the bank's fraud department again. This time, I didn't ask for a history. I asked for the source documents. I need the original signature card for the savings account ending in 4490. I told the agent, and I need the trusted contact authorization form that was filed in September of 2021. I need the actual scanned image, not just the digital record. We can mail those to you. The agent said, 7 to 10 business days. I will pay for overnight shipping. I said, charge it to the account. I spent the next 2 days in a state of high-functioning paranoia. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. I expected Marin to call, demanding to know why her access had been cut off, but she didn't. The silence was unnerving. It meant she hadn't tried to log in yet. She was still riding the high from the luncheon, secure in her control. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. It was a thick, rigid cardboard mailer from the bank's corporate headquarters. I took it to the kitchen table. I didn't open it immediately. I made a cup of tea. I needed to be steady. I sliced the envelope open with a kitchen knife. I pulled out the stack of photocopies. They were grainy, black and white reproductions of the forms I had supposedly signed. I flipped past the standard account agreements. I found the document labeled Addendum, Authorized Third-Party Access, Convenience Signer. I looked at the bottom of the page. There was my signature. Stella Wright. It looked like my handwriting. The loop on the S was right, the sharp cross on the T. But then I looked at the date next to the signature, September 12th, 2021. I froze. September 12th, 2021. I remembered that week vividly. I wasn't in Dawson Harbor. I wasn't even in the state. I had been sent to a logistics conference in Chicago for work. It was the first time I had traveled since Dad died. I remembered it because I had a panic attack in the hotel room, and Marin had to talk me down over the phone. I couldn't have signed a physical document in a bank branch in Dawson Harbor on September 12th. I looked closer at the signature. It was slightly pixelated compared to the rest of the text. The ink density was uniform, flat. It was a copy of a signature. Someone had lifted my signature from another document, maybe one of the estate papers I had actually signed, and pasted it onto this form. Then they had photocopied it to hide the seams. But that wasn't the only thing. There was a small checkbox in the middle of the page. Grant authorization for overdraft protection transfers from linked accounts. Beside the box, there were initials. I stared at the initials. I didn't write my W like that. I had a rounded bottom to my W. This W was sharp, jagged. It leaned to the left. It was Marin's W. I had seen her write it 1,000 times on birthday cards, on checks, on the backs of napkins. It was her distinctive, hasty scrawl. She had gotten sloppy. She had forged the signature with a copy-paste job. But she had initialed the clause herself, probably in a rush at the bank counter, thinking no one would ever look this closely. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a sister helping a sister. This was a felony. I sat back in my chair, the paper trembling in my hand. The room was silent, but my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I had the leverage. I had the trap, but I wasn't going to spring it yet. I picked up my phone and opened my text thread with Marin. The last message was a photo of her at the luncheon, holding her award. So proud of us. She had captioned it. I typed a reply. Hey Marin, I am doing some fall cleaning on my finances. Just realized I have some old tax forms that need clarifying. Can you send me a list of the loans you mentioned last week? I want to make sure I don't double count anything. I stared at the blinking cursor. This was the point of no return. Once I sent this, the war was live. I hit send. I looked down at the forged document one last time. You wanted to handle my finances. Marin, I thought. Congratulations. Now I am going to handle yours. The text message from Marin arrived 45 minutes after I sent my inquiry. I had been sitting at my kitchen island, staring at the screen, watching the minutes tick by on the microwave clock. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was calibrating. She was scrolling through her own mental Rolodex of lies, deciding which version of reality she wanted to present to me today. When the phone finally lit up, the message was long. It was a wall of blue text, punctuated by emojis that felt like tiny yellow gaslights. Oh my gosh. Stell, I am so glad you are finally organizing that mess. I have been telling you for years to get a real accountant. LOL. I don't have my files in front of me. Crazy day at the venue. But from what I remember, I think there is maybe 2,000 or 3,000 outstanding. Mostly from that time I covered Mom's medical deductible and we swapped accounts. I can Venmo you $500 on Friday if things are tight. Love you. I read the message twice. Then I read it a third time, feeling a cold, hard knot tighten in my stomach. $2,000 or $3,000. On the spreadsheet open in front of me, the sum of the temporary advances she had requested for her business, Hale Event Collective. Over the last 3 years alone was $142,000. That didn't even touch the unauthorized withdrawals or the Cedar Ridge wire. She wasn't just minimizing, she was erasing history. She was betting on the fact that I was the same Stella I had been for 5 years, the Stella who was too grief-stricken to read bank statements, the Stella who was too afraid of conflict to ask follow-up questions. She was betting that I was disorganized, emotional, and malleable. I didn't reply immediately. I put the phone down face down on the cool granite of the counter. If I had screamed at her, if I had typed back liar in all caps and attached the screenshots, she would have pivoted. She would have claimed it was a typo, or that she was confused, or that I was being hysterical. She would have muddied the water until the truth disappeared. Instead, I needed her to commit to the lie. I needed her to put her version of the truth on record so I could dismantle it later. I picked up the phone and typed slowly, my thumbs hovering over the keys to ensure I sounded breezy and unbothered. Thanks. Marin, that sounds low, but my records are a disaster. You know me, Do you mind just sending me a quick email confirming that amount? My new tax guy is being a stickler for documentation on family gifts versus loans. Just so I don't get audited, I hit send. The response came back instantly. Ugh, tax guys are the worst. Sure, I will shoot you an email later. Don't let him bully you. I set the phone down. The trap was set. She thought she was signing off on a casual lie to get her annoying little sister off her back. She didn't realize she was about to create a piece of evidence that would prove she was willfully concealing a 6-figure debt. The next morning, I drove out to the north side of Dawson Harbor. It was a gray Tuesday, the kind where the sky looks like wet wool. I told my boss I had a dentist appointment, which was the first lie I had told him in 7 years of employment. It felt strangely easy. I parked my car 2 blocks away from the address I had found on the wire transfer memo, Cedar Ridge Development. The site was massive. It took up 3 city blocks of what used to be old canneries and warehouses. Now, it was a skeleton of steel and concrete, rising up from the waterfront like a monument to new money. Huge banners draped over the chain-link fences showed renderings of the finished product. Sleek glass balconies, a rooftop infinity pool, happy people drinking wine in white linen clothes. Cedar Ridge, redefining harbor living. I stood on the sidewalk, pulling my coat tighter against the wind. The construction noise was deafening, the rhythmic pounding of pile drivers, the beep-beep-beep of reversing excavators. I looked at the sign listing the partners and investors. The developer was a conglomerate out of Seattle. The architect was local. There was no mention of Marin Hale or Hale Event Collective anywhere on the public signage. But money leaves footprints. I had spent the previous night digging through the county recorder's website. I hadn't found Marin's name on a deed, which made sense. The building wasn't finished yet. but I had found the escrow company listed on the permit filings. It matched the bank code on my wire transfer. Marin hadn't bought a condo yet. She had put down a deposit, a massive, non-refundable deposit to secure a pre-construction price on a unit that likely cost more than $1 million. She was using my money to buy her way into a life she couldn't afford, in a building designed to make people look down on the rest of the city. I watched a crane swing a steel beam overhead. I imagined Marin standing on one of those future balconies, sipping champagne, looking out at the water, telling her friends how hard she had worked to get there. The anger didn't feel hot anymore. It felt cold and heavy, like a stone in my pocket. I turned around and walked back to my car. I had seen enough. The building was real. The theft was real. Now I had to prove it. That afternoon, I logged into my bank portal. I was done with the passive observation phase. It was time to fire the first warning shot, but it had to be quiet. I didn't dispute the big wire transfer. That was too big, too loud. It would trigger a fraud investigation that would bring the police to Marin's door before I was ready. Instead, I focused on the leaks, the small, irritating drips that had been draining my accounts for years. I selected 3 specific transactions from 6 months ago. One was a $300 withdrawal from an ATM near Marin's office. One was an online payment to a luxury stationery vendor Marin used. One was a transfer to her personal checking account labeled reimbursement. I clicked the button. File a dispute. Reason for dispute. Transaction not authorized by account holder. I wasn't claiming identity theft. I wasn't claiming my card was stolen. I was claiming that these specific digital movements violated the terms of access because I had not initiated them. It was a test. I wanted to see what the bank could see. 2 days later, I received a secure message from the bank's fraud resolution team. Dear Ms. Wright, regarding your dispute of case number 89204, we have reviewed the access logs for the transactions in question. I opened the attached PDF. It was technical, full of IP addresses and device identifiers. I scanned the lines until I found the column labeled Device Name. Transaction date, June 14th, 2024. Device, iPhone 13 Pro. Marin's recovery. My stomach dropped. I knew that phone. I had been with her when she bought it. She had named it Marin's recovery because she had dropped her previous phone in a swimming pool during a party. The bank's system had logged the device ID. It wasn't a hacker in Russia. It wasn't a glitch. It was a device explicitly named after my sister, logging into my account with my credentials, initiating a transfer to herself. She hadn't just borrowed my card. She had my login, she had my password, and she had saved it on her phone for easy access. I sat back in my chair, the office air conditioning humming around me. This was intent, in the eyes of the law. A mistake is one thing. You can argue you grabbed the wrong credit card from a shared wallet. You can argue you misunderstood a verbal agreement, but logging into someone else's bank account from your private device, navigating through the security screens, and executing a transfer? That requires steps. That requires conscious thought. Every click was a choice. She had chosen to steal from me while sitting on her couch. She had chosen to steal from me while waiting for a table at brunch. She had chosen to steal from me while I was at work, managing logistics for a logistics company, thinking I was building a future. I printed the document. I put it in the binder I had started labeling the audit. I needed help connecting the dots. The spreadsheet was getting too complicated for me to manage alone. I called the number Mr. Henderson, the financial counselor, had given me. It was for a forensic accountant named Elias Vance. Mr. Vance didn't have an office. He met me at a coffee shop on the edge of the financial district. He was a small, intense man who drank espresso and spoke in rapid-fire bursts. Layering, he said, after I explained the pattern of transfers. That is what you are looking at. It is a classic embezzlement technique, usually seen in corporate fraud. But families do it too. He pulled a napkin holder over and started arranging sugar packets to demonstrate. This packet is your money, he said, tapping a pink packet. This packet is her money, and this blue one is the joint account. He moved the pink packet to the blue packet. Step 1. She moves your money to the joint account. To you, it looks like you are contributing to Mom's care. It looks noble. He moved the pink packet from the blue pile to the white pile. Step 2. She pays a bill for herself from the joint account, or she transfers a reimbursement to her personal account. He looked up at me, his eyes sharp. By the time the money hits her pocket, it has been washed twice. If you look at her bank statement, she didn't take money from Stella. She took money from the family trust, or whatever she calls the joint account. If you look at your statement, you didn't give money to Marin. You gave money to Mom. He leaned back. It creates distance. It creates plausible deniability. She can say, I didn't know that was Stella's money in the joint account. I thought it was Mom's pension. But she knew. I said quietly, she knew Mom's pension is only $1,200 a month. Mr. Vance shrugged. Knowing and proving are different things. But here is where she messed up. He tapped the paper I had brought, the device log from the bank. She got lazy. She stopped layering. See these direct transfers? The ATM withdrawals? The wire to Cedar Ridge? She got comfortable. She stopped washing the money because she stopped fearing you would check. He took a sip of his espresso. How much are we talking about? Total? $480,000. I said, give or take. Mr. Vance let out a low whistle. That is not a sister borrowing gas money. Ms. Right? That is a predatory lifestyle subsidy. She is living a $500,000 life on your dime. I looked out the window at the passing cars. A predatory lifestyle subsidy. That was the phrase that stuck. Marin wasn't just greedy. She was feeding on me. That night, the grief finally hit me. It hadn't happened when I saw the numbers. It hadn't happened when I saw the construction site. It happened when I was folding laundry. I picked up a sweater, a soft gray cardigan I had bought 3 years ago. I remembered buying it. I had been at the mall with Marin. She had been buying a dress for a gala. Something sequined and expensive. I had hesitated over the sweater because it was $80. Get it, Stell, Marin had said, rolling her eyes. You work so hard. You deserve a treat. Don't be such a miser. I had bought the sweater, feeling guilty for the indulgence. Now I realized she had bought the dress with my money, and she had shamed me for hesitating to spend my own money on a sweater. I sat down on the floor of my bedroom, holding the gray wool to my chest. I started to cry. Not the pretty, single-tear crying you see in movies. This was ugly, heaving sobbing that made my ribs ache. I wasn't crying for the money. I was crying for the relationship I thought I had. I had spent 5 years trying to be the easy sister after Dad died. Marin had been so loud in her grief, so dramatic, so consuming. I had decided that the only way to help the family survive was to be the opposite, to be quiet, to be low maintenance, to ask for nothing. I thought I was being strong. I thought I was being the glue, but I wasn't the glue. I was the fuel. I had made myself small so she could be big. I had made myself poor so she could be rich. I had handed her the knife and thanked her for cutting me. The shame was hot and suffocating. How could I be so stupid? I was a professional woman. I managed logistics for a multi-state territory. I negotiated contracts with trucking unions. How could I let my sister rob me blind for 5 years? Because she was my sister. Because the con wasn't financial. It was emotional. She had weaponized our history. She had weaponized my grief. She had weaponized my desire to be a good family member. I wiped my face with the sleeve of the sweater. The crying stopped as abruptly as it had begun. I stood up. I walked to the bathroom and washed my face. My eyes were red, but my hands were steady. I was done being the easy sister. I went to my desk. I opened the binder. I turned to the section labeled Hale Event Collective. I had always assumed Marin's business was struggling. She talked about it constantly. The overhead, the difficult clients, the thin margins. That was why I had agreed to the loans. I thought I was keeping her afloat. But Mr. Vance and I had dug deeper. We had cross-referenced her social media posts with the dates of the transfers. August 2022. I transfer $5,000 for payroll emergency. August 2022. Marin posts a photo from a first-class seat on a flight to Cabo. Business retreat. Boss babe. November 2023. I transfer $8,000 for urgent vendor deposit. November 2023. Hale Event Collective hosts a launch party for a luxury handbag line. Marin is wearing a new Cartier watch in the photos. The business wasn't struggling. The business was a vehicle for her vanity, and I was the venture capitalist who would never see a return. I needed to close the net. I drafted a new email. This one was to Marin. Subject: Consolidating the finances. Good news. Hey Marin, I know we are both busy, but I have been working with my financial planner, and he suggested something that might help us both. Instead of having all these little random transfers and loans floating around from the last few years, he wants me to consolidate everything into one single repayment plan. I went through my records, and yours, and it looks like the total for the business support and the personal bridge loans comes to about $150,000. I am leaving out the joint account stuff for now. Let's just focus on the direct loans. I know that is a big number, but don't panic. I am not asking for it all at once. I want to structure it so it is easy for you. Maybe a 5-year term? Low interest? If we get this signed and formalized, I can get the tax guy off my back and you can stop worrying about the random Venmos. I just need to get it on paper so my books are clean. I attached a draft of the agreement. Let me know if this works for you. I'm just trying to help us both get organized. It was a strategic lowball. The real number was $480,000. But if I said $480,000, she would run. She would lawyer up. She would claim insanity. But $150,000? That was a number she could psychologically manage. It was less than a third of what she had taken. She would look at that number and think, wow, I got away with the rest. She would think I was still stupid. She would think I had missed the Cedar Ridge wire. She would think I had missed the pass-throughs. She would sign it to make the problem go away, thinking she was getting a deal. But the moment she signed a document acknowledging $150,000 of debt, she was admitting that the transfers were loans, not gifts. She was destroying her own defense. I hit send. Marin didn't reply for 24 hours. I went to work. I sat in meetings about fuel surcharges. I ate a sandwich at my desk. I checked my email every 10 minutes. Finally, at 4 p.m. on Thursday, a reply appeared. Stella, you are such a lifesaver. Honestly, looking at the numbers gave me a heart attack. But you are right. We need to get this organized. I am so grateful you are willing to work with me on the timeline. Business has been crazy, but big things are coming. I printed the agreement, signed it, and scanned it back. I made one tiny little tweak just for my own accountant's peace of mind. But otherwise, we are good to go. Love you. Best sister ever. I opened the attachment. It was the document I had sent. Her signature was scrawled at the bottom in blue ink. I scanned the paragraphs. Section 1. Acknowledgement of debt. Section 2. Repayment schedule. Then my eyes stopped on Section 4. I had written, the borrower acknowledges that these funds were provided as personal loans for business and emergency use. Marin had crossed out the word loans with a pen and written advances above it. And then, in the margin, she had added a handwritten clause, initialed by her. Note: repayment is contingent upon business profitability and shall be considered a retroactive gift if business liquidity falls below minimal thresholds, per verbal agreement of 2020. I stared at the screen. Per verbal agreement of 2020. There was no verbal agreement of 2020. She had just invented a clause that essentially said, I only have to pay you back if I feel like I have enough money. Otherwise, it was a gift. She wasn't just signing the trap. She was trying to reverse engineer it. She was trying to trick me into countersigning a document that would legally turn her theft into a donation. If I signed this, I would lose everything. I would be agreeing that the money was a gift if she simply claimed her business was illiquid. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Not shame this time. Rage. Pure, clarifying rage. She truly thought I was an idiot. She thought she could scribble a few words in the margin and I would just nod and say, Okay, Marin, whatever you say. I didn't reply. I didn't sign it. I saved the document. I saved her email where she admitted the numbers gave her a heart attack, an admission of guilt disguised as chatty banter. I picked up my phone and called my attorney. She didn't sign the clean version. I told him. She altered it. She tried to insert a gift clause. I could hear the attorney typing on the other end. That is fine. Stella, he said, his voice calm. Actually, that is better. Better? I asked. Yes. Because now we have her acknowledging the transfer of funds. She admitted the money moved. She admitted the amount. The only dispute now is the nature of the transaction. She claims it is a conditional gift. You claim it is a loan. He paused. But you have the text messages where she asks for loans. You have the bank wires labeled loan. You have the device logs showing she took the money without asking. Her little handwritten note in the margin doesn't override 5 years of digital evidence, but now, she is formally engaged. She has admitted the money is hers. She can't claim she never received it. I looked at the document on my screen, at Marin's jagged handwriting in the margin. So what do? I asked. Now we take the gloves off, he said. We don't accept her counteroffer. We reject it, and we file the formal demand for the full amount, not the $150,000, the full $480. I looked at the spreadsheet one last time. I looked at the best sister ever sign-off in her email. Do it, I said. The easy sister was dead. The operations manager was in charge now, and I was about to audit Marin Hale into the ground. My attorney, a man named Robert who spoke with the dry precision of a metronome, drafted the response. It was a masterpiece of corporate neutrality. We stripped away the emotion. We stripped away the history. We simply sent back a clean legal addendum to the repayment plan Marin had tried to manipulate. Clause 4.1. The funds detailed in Exhibit A are acknowledged by both parties as interest-bearing loans. No portion of these funds shall be classified as a gift, retroactive or otherwise, regardless of the borrower's business liquidity. I sent it on a Thursday morning. Hi, Marin. My lawyer reviewed your notes. Unfortunately, for tax compliance on my end, we cannot include the gift contingency clause. It triggers a different audit category for me. I have attached the clean version. Once you sign this, we can move forward with the consolidation. I waited. The silence that followed was different from the silence before. Marin's silence was the silence of a busy woman ignoring a gnat. This silence was the static of a frequency being jammed. When the reply finally came, 4 hours later, the emojis were gone. The exclamation points were gone. Stella, I am trying to work with you here, but you are making this incredibly difficult. I am offering to pay you back as a courtesy, not because I am legally obligated to refund family support. If you are going to bring lawyers into a sisterly arrangement, we have a problem. Mom is asking why you are acting so aggressive. I stared at the word aggressive. For 5 years. I had been passive. I had been the doormat. The one time I asked for a signature on a document to protect my own retirement savings, I was aggressive. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't call Mom to defend myself. I simply picked up my phone and opened my banking app. It was time to start the slow bleed. I had already identified the low-hanging fruit, the transactions that were blatantly unauthorized, the ones where she had used my debit card number for online purchases without even bothering to hide the merchant name. I initiated 12 disputes in 1 hour. Dispute 1. Nordstrom, $400. Reason: unauthorized use. Dispute 2. Hale Event, collective web hosting, $50. Reason: recurring charge not authorized. Dispute 3. Uber Eats, $80. Reason: unauthorized use. I wasn't asking her to pay me back. I was asking the bank to forcibly reverse the charges. 2 days later, the notifications started rolling in. Dispute resolved in your favor. Credit issued. $400. Dispute resolved in your favor. Credit issued. $50. It was a drop in the bucket of $480,000, but it was a start. More importantly, it sent a signal. Every time a charge was reversed, Marin's merchant account would get flagged. Her credit card processor would see the chargebacks. I was damaging her financial reputation in the algorithms, the only place that really mattered. Then I drove to the bank branch on 4th Street. I sat down with a personal banker. I need to close the joint account ending in 332. I said. The banker looked up my profile. I see there is a second signer on this account, Marin Hale. Yes, I said, but the account is titled Wright and Hale, with or survivorship. That means either of us can close it unilaterally. Correct? That is correct. The banker said. Close it. I said. Issue a cashier's check for the remaining balance to me. There wasn't much left. $840. Marin kept the balance low on purpose, transferring money in only to immediately transfer it out. But that $840 wasn't hers. It was the remnants of my last deposit for Mom's care. When I walked out of the bank with the check in my purse, I felt a strange vibration in my pocket. My phone. It was my Aunt Linda. I stared at the screen. Aunt Linda hadn't called me on a Tuesday in a decade. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, a text from my cousin Sarah. Hey, Stell. Just heard you are going through a tough time. Let me know if you need to talk. We are all here for you. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel. Marin was moving fast. She realized she was losing control of the money, so she was attacking the narrative. She was calling the family. She was painting the picture before I could even pick up the brush. I could hear her voice in my head, pitching it perfectly to our relatives. Stella is spiraling. She is obsessing over money. I think she is having a breakdown. I tried to help her, but she is lashing out. I wanted to scream. I wanted to group text the entire family and attach the PDF of the Cedar Ridge wire transfer. But I heard David's voice in my head. Keep it clean. Keep it documented. I drove home. David was there, chopping vegetables for a stir-fry. He looked at my face and set the knife down. She is making calls, isn't she? He asked. I nodded, dropping my keys on the counter. Aunt Linda? Sarah? Probably Mom, too. She is telling them I am crazy. She is telling them I am the one with the problem. David walked over and put his hands on my shoulders. He was solid, warm, unshakable. Let her talk, he said. Words are wind. Stella, you have the ledger. You have the bank logs. It hurts. David, I said, my voice cracking. It hurts that they believe her. They believe her because she is loud. He said, you are going to be right. Being right takes longer, but it lasts forever. He was right. I couldn't fight her on the gossip circuit. I didn't have the energy or the charisma to outmanipulate Marin Hale at a family barbecue. I had to fight her in the ledger. The next week, I found the leak I needed. I had been scouring LinkedIn, looking for anyone who had worked closely with Marin at Hale Event Collective. I found a profile for a woman named Chloe Mercer. Her profile said she had been the executive assistant at Hale Event Collective for 2 years, ending 3 months ago. I remembered Chloe. She was young, efficient, and always looked slightly terrified whenever I saw her at Marin's events. I sent her a message. It was carefully worded. Hi, Chloe. This is Stella Wright, Marin's sister. I am doing some reconciling of some old family accounts and found some invoices with your name on them. I just wanted to verify a few details so I don't bother Marin with administrative stuff. Would you be open to a quick coffee? My treat. I didn't expect her to reply. People in Marin's orbit usually protected her, but Chloe replied within 10 minutes. I can meet. I am free tomorrow at 10. We met at a coffee shop far away from Marin's office. Chloe looked different than I remembered. She looked rested. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, not the all-black event staff uniform I was used to seeing her in. She didn't order coffee. She ordered a peppermint tea. I am not going to lie to you. Stella, she said, wrapping her hands around the mug. I quit because I couldn't sleep at night. I felt a prickle of anticipation on the back of my neck. Why couldn't you sleep? I asked. Chloe looked around the shop, checking for eavesdroppers. Because of the way she handles money, Chloe said, it was chaotic. She would book these massive vendors, florists, lighting designers, caterers. Without having the deposit money in the business account, she would scream at me to figure it out. Then, 20 minutes later, she would walk in, smiling, and say, the universe provided. The universe provided. She called it manifesting abundance, Chloe said, rolling her eyes. She would say, I just put the intention out there, and the money appeared. Then she would hand me a confirmation number for a wire transfer. I opened my folder. I slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of a transfer from my savings account to Hale Event Collective for $6,000. Did the universe provide this? I asked. Chloe looked at the date. November 12th, 2023. She read, Oh, I remember this. This was for the fall gala, the deposit for the linens. She was panicking because the linen company was going to pull the contract. She looked up at me. She told me you insisted on investing. Chloe said, She told me you were begging to be a silent partner in the business because you believed in her visions so much. She said she finally let you put money in. I felt the blood drain from my face. I never asked to be a partner. I said, I thought I was loaning her money for payroll. Chloe let out a short, bitter laugh. Payroll? Stella. We were always late on payroll, but she always had money for her personal branding shoots. Chloe reached into her tote bag. I brought something. She said, I probably shouldn't have kept it, but when I left, I made a copy of the gala folder, just in case she tried to blame me for something later. She slid a document across the table. It was a vendor invoice from a company called Lux Drapery. The total was $12,000. Look at the billing section, Chloe said. I looked. Bill. 2. Hale Event Collective. Paid by Stella Wright. Visa ending in 4091. I stared at the number, 4091. That was my primary credit card. I never authorized this. I whispered, I know. Chloe said, because I was in the room when she called it in. She had your card number written on a sticky note stuck to her monitor. She read it off to the vendor like it was her own corporate card. When I asked her about it, she said, Stella and I share resources. It is all one pot. One pot. My pot. Her spoon. But look at the bottom, Chloe said, pointing to a line item I had missed. Event reference. Dawson Harbor Community Foundation. Winter Gala. My head snapped up. The foundation? I asked. But this invoice is billed to Hale Event Collective. Exactly. Chloe said, Marin's company was hired to plan the charity gala. The charity paid Marin a management fee, but Marin used your card to pay the vendors. I tried to follow the math. So the charity paid Marin to cover the costs. I said, but Marin used my money to pay the costs. So where did the charity's money go? Chloe raised her eyebrows. Into Marin's pocket. She pocketed the production budget and floated the expenses on your credit cards. She double-dipped. She got paid by the client, and she got paid by stealing from you. I sat back, the noise of the coffee shop fading into a dull roar. This wasn't just theft. This was fraud against a nonprofit. This was using a 501c3 organization as a laundering vehicle. Can I keep this? I asked, holding up the invoice. Chloe nodded. Take it. I don't want anything to do with her. She is a sinking ship. Stella, get off before she pulls you under. I had the invoice. I had the testimony. But I needed to see the other side of the transaction. I needed to see the foundation's books. The Dawson Harbor Community Foundation was the jewel of the local social scene. They raised millions for the hospital, the library, and the arts. Marin had been on the board for 3 years. She treated her board seat like a royal title. I couldn't just walk in and ask for their ledger. I needed a way in that didn't look like an attack. I called my friend Julie. Julie wasn't in Marin's circle. Julie was a CPA who did audit work for half the nonprofits in the city. I know the foundation is coming up on their fiscal year end. I said to Julie over the phone, do they need volunteers for the audit committee? I have some PTO to burn and I want to get some board experience. Julie laughed. Every nonprofit needs volunteers for the audit committee. Stella, nobody wants to do it. It is boring work. If you want to spend 3 nights looking at spreadsheets, they will throw a parade for you. 2 days later, I was sitting in a conference room at the foundation's headquarters. It was a Tuesday evening. There were 3 of us on the volunteer committee, me, a retired banker named George, and a young guy from a tech firm. We were given read-only access to the accounting software and a stack of physical files. Our job was to spot-check transactions for compliance. I volunteered to check the donor-advised funds and the gala expenses. I worked quietly. I was the operations manager. I knew how to look for patterns. I found Marin's donor profile. According to the Foundation's annual report, Marin Hale was a gold-level donor. She was credited with giving $25,000 in the last fiscal year. I opened the transaction history for her donations. Donation, $5,000. Date, March 12th. Method, check. I clicked on the image of the check. It was a personal check. From the account Wright and Hale, my joint account. I looked at the signature. It was Marin's. She had written a check from our joint account, money that was 90% mine, and donated it to the foundation in her own name. I felt a surge of bile. She was buying social status with my labor. When people applauded her at luncheons, they were applauding my overtime, my skipped vacations, my frugal life. But then I found something worse. I looked at the expenses for the winter gala, the event Chloe had told me about. I found the payment from the foundation to Hale Event Collective. Payment, $50,000. Memo, event production. Vendor pass-through. The foundation had wired Marin $50,000 to pay the vendors, but Marin hadn't used that money to pay Lux Drapery. She had used my Visa card to pay Lux Drapery. So where was the $50,000? I switched tabs to Marin's bank history, the one I had built for my own forensic work. I checked the date of the foundation's wire. October 14th, 2023. Incoming wire, $50,000. 2 days later, October 16th, 2023. Outgoing wire, Cedar Ridge Escrow, $45,000. I closed my eyes. The room seemed to spin. She had taken the production budget from the charity. She had kept it. She had used it to fund her second deposit on the condo. Then she had paid the actual vendors with my credit card. She was stealing from everyone. She was stealing from me to pay the charity's vendors. She was stealing from the charity to pay for her condo. It was a Ponzi scheme of one. I printed the pages. I made sure to print the check image from the joint account and the wire transfer log. I slid the papers into my bag. I looked at George, the retired banker. "Everything look okay over there?" he asked. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. "Everything balances," I said. "I just found a few interesting anomalies. I didn't go to the police yet. I didn't go to the board. I needed to hear her say it. I needed to know if there was any part of my sister left inside the con artist." I drove to my apartment. It was late, almost 10 o'clock. I sat on my couch in the dark. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't look at my phone. I dialed Marin's number. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was loud. Background noise of a restaurant behind her. "Stella? Is everything okay?" "It is late. I am fine. Marin," I said. My voice was very quiet. "Oh, good. Listen, I can't really talk. I am at drinks with the Arts Council, but I got your email about the repayment plan. We really need to discuss that interest rate. It is a little ridiculous for family—" "Marin," I interrupted. She stopped. "I found the Lux Drapery invoice." I said, silence. The background noise of the restaurant seemed to swell. Clinking glasses, laughter, but on the line, there was a vacuum. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. Her voice had dropped an octave. It was guarded. "And I found the check," I continued. "The $5,000 donation to the Children's Fund. You wrote it from the joint account, from Mom's Care Fund. But you took the tax receipt in your name, Stella. You are confused. That was a reimbursement for—" "Stop," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't let my voice tremble. I spoke with the flat, absolute authority of a judge reading a verdict. I know about the credit card fraud. I know about the charity money. I know about Cedar Ridge. Marin breathed into the phone, a sharp, jagged intake of air. "You are spying on me?" she hissed. "You are stalking me? This is insane. Stella, you are violating my privacy. I will sue you." I almost laughed. "You stole $480,000 from me. Marin, you stole from the foundation. You are buying a condo with stolen money." "I am handling it," she snapped. "It is all liquidity management. I was going to pay it back once the development deal closed. You don't understand high finance. Stella, you are a logistics manager. You move boxes. I move capital. I closed my eyes. Even now. Even caught red-handed. She had to be the smart one. She had to be the one moving capital. I'm not asking what you meant to do, I said, my voice gentle, almost sad. I am asking what you did. There was a long pause. I did what I had to do, she whispered, because I am the one who has to be someone in this family. Then she hung up. I stared at the phone. The screen went black. She hadn't denied it. She had justified it. She believed she was entitled to my money because she was Marin, because she was the star, because she had a destiny that required funding, and I was just the resource to be harvested. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the lights of Dawson Harbor. I had the evidence. I had the confession, even if it wasn't recorded. The private phase was over. Marin wanted to be someone. She wanted to be a star. I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. I was going to put her in the spotlight. But I was going to choose the stage, and I was going to choose the audience. The Winter Gala was in 3 weeks, and I had a ticket. The invitation was not really an invitation. It was a summons disguised as a Sunday dinner. Mom really wants everyone together, Marin had texted, her tone breezily ignoring the fact that I had accused her of grand larceny 3 days prior. Let's just clear the air. Family first. I parked my car down the street from my mother's house. I needed the walk. The air was crisp, smelling of damp leaves and wood smoke, the kind of autumn evening that usually made me feel grounded. Tonight, it felt like the calm before a demolition. I checked my bag. I had a plain manila folder inside. It contained 5 sheets of paper, not the whole binder, just 5 undeniable, black and white facts. I walked into the house and found the ambush waiting. It wasn't just Mom and Marin. My Aunt Linda was there, sitting on the floral sofa with her arms crossed. My cousin Sarah was pretending to examine a ceramic figurine on the mantel. Marin sat in the wingback chair, the throne of the living room, holding a glass of wine. She looked tired, her makeup applied with a heavier hand than usual, but her posture was defiant. "Stella," Mom said, coming to hug me. Her embrace was tight, desperate. "I am so glad you came. Marin says there has been some misunderstanding." I pulled back gently. "Hi, Mom. It is not a misunderstanding." Marin sighed loudly, setting her wineglass down on a coaster with a sharp clink. "See?" Marin said, gesturing to me like I was an exhibit in a courtroom. "She is dug in. She has been like this for weeks, obsessive." I walked to the center of the room. I didn't sit down. If I sat, I was a child being scolded. If I stood, I was the one running the meeting. I am not obsessive. "Marin," I said, "I am audited." Aunt Linda chimed in. "Stella, honey, we know you have had a hard time since your dad passed. We know grief comes out in funny ways, but attacking your sister over money? Marin has been carrying this family." I looked at Aunt Linda. She was wearing a necklace I knew Marin had given her for Christmas. A necklace bought, in all likelihood, with my money. I didn't argue. I didn't defend my mental health. I didn't scream that I was the operations manager of a logistics firm and not a grief-stricken waif. I opened the folder. "I have a few questions for Marin." I said, "Just yes or no. That is all I need." Marin rolled her eyes. "This is ridiculous. I am not doing this." "Did you sign a document on September 12th, 2021, authorizing yourself as a signer on my personal savings account?" I asked. Marin scoffed. "I helped you with paperwork. You were a zombie." "Stella, you couldn't even—" "Yes or no?" I interrupted. "I don't remember the exact date." Marin snapped. "I signed what needed to be signed to keep the lights on." I pulled out the first paper, the travel itinerary. On September 12th, 2021, I was in Chicago. I said, "I have the flight records. I physically could not have signed that form in Dawson Harbor. Did you forge my signature?" Marin's face tightened. "It wasn't forgery. It was proxy. Yes or no?" "I did it for you," she shouted. "Question 2. I continued, my voice flat. "Did you use my Visa card ending in 4091 to pay $12,000 to Lux Drapery for the Winter Gala?" Marin stood up. I am not answering these. You are cherry-picking transactions to make me look bad. Did you or did you not charge $12,000 to my card for a client event? It was a bridge loan, she yelled. The foundation's wire was late. Did you tell me? I asked. Marin threw her hands up. I didn't have to tell you. We are partners. We are sisters. We are not partners, I said, and being sisters does not give you power of attorney. Mom stepped forward, wringing her hands. Stella, please, stop it. Marin has done so much. She paid for the roof repairs. She paid for the new boiler. I turned to Mom. No, Mom, I said gently. She didn't. I checked the joint account. I paid for the roof. I paid for the boiler. Marin wrote the check, but the money came from my deposits. Liar, Marin screamed. The sound shocked the room. Marin never screamed. Marin charmed. Marin manipulated, but she never lost her cool. I am the one who handles everything, Marin shouted, her face flushing a blotchy red. Who talks to the doctors? Me. Who deals with the insurance? Me. Who keeps this family relevant in this town? Me. She poked a finger at her own chest. I built the Hale name. I am the one out there every night, networking, shaking hands, making sure people remember who we are. And you? You sit in your little apartment and count pennies. You have no idea what it costs to be me. So you took my money because you felt entitled to it? I asked. I took what I needed to survive. She spat. Because I am the successful one. Stella. I am the one who actually did something with my life. Dad knew it. He knew I was the one who was going to take us places. That is why he trusted me. The room went silent. My father had died without a will. He hadn't trusted anyone more than anyone else. He had just died. But I saw it then. The narrative she had spun, in the vacuum of our father's death, while I was numb with grief. Marin hadn't just taken control of the paperwork. She had rewritten the mythology of our family. In her version, she was the chosen heir, the dynamic leader, and I was the damaged, incompetent little sister who needed to be managed. She believed it. That was the terrifying part. She truly believed that my money was her money because she was the main character and I was just a supporting role. She looked at me, breathing hard, her chest heaving. You owe me, she hissed, for keeping you safe, for handling the world while you hid. I looked at my mother. Mom was staring at the floor, crying silently. She knew, somewhere, deep down, she knew Marin was lying. But Marin was the sun. And you don't look directly at the sun. I closed the folder. I don't owe you anything. Marin, I said, and I'm taking it all back. I walked out. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't wait for Aunt Linda to lecture me. I walked out into the cold air, got in my car, and locked the doors. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. The sisterhood was over. This was now a transaction. The next morning, I met with Robert. We sat in his glass-walled conference room. I placed the folder on the table. She confessed. I said, in front of witnesses, she admitted she took the money because she felt she deserved it. Robert nodded. He didn't smile. Lawyers don't smile at family tragedies. That helps, he said. But it is still hearsay unless we get it in a deposition. We need to move to the formal demand. He slid a document across the table. We have calculated the total traceable unauthorized transfers, he said, based on the bank logs, the credit card statements, and the forged checks. The total is $482,400. I looked at the number. It was a house. It was a life. However, Robert said, tapping the paper with his pen, if we demand the full amount, including the emotional damages and the nebulous cash withdrawals that are harder to prove, she will fight. She will drag this out for 3 years. He looked at me. What is your goal? Stella, do you want to destroy her, or do you want your money back? I want my money. I said, I want to be whole. Then we cut the fat. He said, we remove the cash withdrawals where she might argue she bought groceries for your mother. We remove the shared meals. We focus only on the hard, digital, indefensible theft, the wires, the credit card payments to her vendors, The transfers to her personal account. He circled a number at the bottom of the page. $390,000. He said, "This is the clean number. If we demand this, and we attach the evidence of the forgery and the device logs, any competent lawyer she hires will tell her to settle. If she goes to court with this evidence against her, she goes to prison." I looked at the number. It was less than what she took. I would be losing nearly $100,000 in the gray zone of her manipulation, but I would get my life back. "Send it," I said. 2 days later, the counterattack arrived. It wasn't a check. It was a letter from a lawyer Marin had hired, a man named Mr. Sterling, known in Dawson Harbor for being loud and expensive. The letter was aggressive. It accused me of harassing a prominent community figure. It claimed the transfers were gifts given freely in the course of a familial relationship. It threatened a countersuit for defamation of character. Citing my public accusations at the family dinner, I read the letter in my kitchen, drinking black coffee. My hands didn't shake. 6 months ago, this letter would have broken me. I would have called Marin, sobbing, apologizing, begging her to stop. But I wasn't that Stella anymore. I was the Stella who had seen the device logs. I called Robert. "She is bluffing, isn't she?" I asked. "Standard operating procedure," Robert said. "She is trying to scare you. She thinks you don't have the stomach for a fight." "I have the stomach," I said. I hung up and went to my computer. I wasn't going to rely solely on Marin to pay me back. I was going to go to the source. I pulled up the list of vendors Marin had paid with my credit card. Lux Drapery, Highline Catering, the Floral Studio. These were businesses. They had reputations. They had merchant agreements. I called Lux Drapery first. "Hi, this is Stella Wright." I said, "I am reviewing my credit card statement and I see a charge of $12,000 for an event. There seems to be a mistake. I didn't authorize this charge. My sister, Marin Hale, seems to have used my card number in error." The woman on the phone sounded panicked. "Oh, Ms. Hale is a regular client. She called the number in." We assumed it was her card. "I understand," I said, keeping my voice pleasant. "I don't want to file a chargeback with Visa, because that hurts your merchant rating and involves fees. But I cannot pay for these drapes." There was a pause. The implied threat hung in the air. If I filed a fraud claim, the vendor would lose the money instantly and get flagged by the credit card company. "What do you suggest?" the woman asked. "I suggest you refund my card today," I said, "and then you can send a new invoice to Marin Hale to be paid by check or wire. I am sure she will clear it up immediately." It was a squeeze play. The vendor refunded the money within the hour. $12,000 credited back to my account. Then, inevitably, they called Marin. I could imagine the phone call. "Marin, your sister says you used her card without permission. We refunded her. You need to pay us $12,000 today or we are pulling the drapes for the gala. I did this with 3 vendors. Highline Catering refunded $8,000. The Floral Studio refunded $4,000. I recovered $24,000 in one afternoon without ever speaking to Marin. But the third call, to a lighting company called Lumina, revealed something else. "I can refund the $3,000, the manager told me, sounding annoyed. "But frankly, Ms. Wright, your sister's billing is a nightmare." "Oh?" I asked. "She split the deposit for the winter gala across 5 different cards." He said, "$3,000 on yours, $2,000 on hers, and small chunks on 3 other prepaid debit cards. She said she needed to keep the transactions under $5,000 for internal compliance." I froze. Internal compliance. Why would she need to keep transactions under $5,000? Because the foundation's audit rules likely required dual signatures for expenses over $5,000. By splitting the payments, Marin was bypassing the charity's oversight. She was structuring the payments to hide the total cost of the event, likely so she could pocket the difference between the budget she was given and the money she was actually spending. This wasn't just stealing from me. This was systemic fraud against the nonprofit. I sat back. This was the nuclear button. If I took this to the foundation board, Marin wouldn't just be embarrassed. She would be removed. She would be blacklisted. She might be prosecuted. But if I did that, what happened to the charity? I thought about the after-school programs the foundation funded. I thought about the library wing they were building. If a scandal this big broke, donors would flee, the innocent staff members, the program directors, the administrative assistants would lose their jobs. Justice for me might mean destruction for them. I wrestled with it for 2 days. I looked at the ceiling at night. Did I have the right to burn down the house to kill the rat in the wall? I decided I didn't. Not yet. I would use the evidence, but I would use it as a scalpel, not a bomb. We scheduled a mediation. Marin's lawyer, Mr. Sterling, had evidently seen the evidence Robert sent over. The forged signature, the IP logs, the structuring. His tone had shifted from aggressive to conciliatory. We met in a neutral conference room downtown. Marin wouldn't look at me. She sat stiffly, wearing sunglasses indoors, clutching her designer bag like a shield. "My client is willing to settle," Mr. Sterling said, clearing his throat, to avoid the unpleasantness of a public trial. "We are listening," Robert said. "Ms. Hale does not have $390,000 in liquid cash," Sterling said. "Her assets are tied up in brand equity. Then she needs to liquidate the equity." I said. Marin made a noise of disgust. "We have a proposal," Sterling continued. "Ms. Hale will transfer the remaining balance of her investment account, approximately $80,000. She will take out a second mortgage on her personal residence to generate another $100,000. That is $180,000, Robert said. "We are still short by $210,000. Sterling hesitated. "Ms. Hale is willing to liquidate certain personal property." I looked at Marin. "Sell the car?" I said. Marin flinched. "The Range Rover? It is a lease. Buy out the lease and sell it." I said, "You have equity in it. That is $20,000 right there. And the storage unit," I added. Marin whipped her head around to look at me, lowering her sunglasses. "You stay out of my storage unit. That is my inventory. It is filled with high-end furniture, art, and decor that you bought with my money." I said, "You don't have events to use them for. Sell it. All of it." Marin looked at her lawyer. He gave her a small, imperceptible nod. He knew. He knew I had enough to send her to jail. He was trying to save her from herself. "Fine," Marin whispered. We drafted the agreement right there. It was brutal. It was a dismantling of the Marin Hale brand. She had to sell the car. She had to liquidate the storage unit through an auction house. She had to empty her investment accounts. She had to borrow against her home. By the time the calculations were done, we had identified $350,000 in recoverable assets. It wasn't the full $480,000, but combined with the vendor refunds I had already triggered, I was getting close to $400,000 back. I signed the papers. Marin signed them with a hand that shook so badly the pen skittered across the page. She stood up to leave. She looked smaller. The glamour was gone, replaced by a frantic, trapped energy. "You are ruining me," she hissed as she walked past me. "I hope you are happy. You burned your own family for money." I didn't look up from the papers. I didn't burn the family. "Marin, I just stopped paying for the fuel." The checks started arriving 2 weeks later. The $80,000 from the investment account. The check from the auction house for the furniture. The wire transfer from the refinancing of her house. I watched my bank account balance climb. It was a strange feeling. It didn't feel like winning the lottery. It felt like watching a wound slowly stitch itself closed. I paid off my credit cards. I replenished my savings. I finally felt the knot of anxiety in my chest begin to loosen. I was safe. I was solvent. But there was one loose end. The Cedar Ridge wire. I had $25,000 outstanding. The money she had wired directly to the escrow account for the condo deposit. The mediation agreement required her to refund that, too. But she claimed she couldn't get it back until the closing, or until she found a buyer to take over her contract. I wanted to verify that. I called the escrow company listed on the wire transfer. I identified myself as an interested party with a lien on the funds, which, thanks to the mediation agreement, I technically was. "I am calling about the deposit for Unit 404, I said, under the name Marin Hale. The escrow officer typed for a moment. Unit 404? We don't have a simple deposit for that unit. That unit is under a partnership agreement. I frowned. A partnership? Yes, the officer said. The $25,000 wasn't a standard hold deposit. It was a buy-in for a limited partner stake in the development LLC. Ms. Hale isn't just buying a condo. She is listed as a minority investor in the Cedar Ridge project itself. I felt the room tilt. She hadn't just used my money to buy a condo. She had used my money to become a developer. And if she was an investor, does the partnership agreement have a payout clause? I asked. Not until the project is completed, the officer said. But the initial valuation of her share, let me see here. It was leveraged. Her $25,000 bought her a stake currently valued at over $200,000 based on the pre-sales. I hung up the phone. Marin hadn't told the mediators about this. She hadn't listed this asset. She had claimed the $25,000 was lost in a non-refundable deposit. She was hiding a $200,000 asset. She was going to let me strip her of her furniture and her car, crying poverty the whole time, while she sat on a winning lottery ticket bought with my stolen cash. The anger I thought had dissipated came rushing back, hotter and darker than before. She was still lying. Even after the confrontation, even after the lawyers, she was incapable of the truth. I looked at the calendar. The winter gala was in 3 days. Marin was still scheduled to be honored. The charity didn't know about the fraud. They didn't know about the structuring. They thought she was their golden girl. She was going to stand on that stage, wearing a dress she probably bought with a hidden credit card, and accept an award for generosity. Knowing she was sitting on a secret fortune stolen from her sister, I had tried to be quiet. I had tried to be surgical. I had tried to save the innocent bystanders, but Marin wouldn't stop. I picked up the invoice from Lux Drapery. I picked up the split payment records from Lumina. I picked up the evidence of the Cedar Ridge equity stake. I put them all in a new folder. I wasn't going to mediation this time. I was going to the gala, and I wasn't going to sit in the back. The Marrowgate Hotel was a fortress of Gilded Age ambition, all marble columns and velvet drapes that swallowed sound. Tonight, it was hosting the Dawson Harbor Community Foundation's Winter Gala. I walked through the revolving doors wearing a dress I had bought 3 years ago on clearance, a simple, midnight blue silk that fit me better now that the stress of the last 2 months had carved a little extra space around my ribs. I wasn't here to drink champagne. I wasn't here to clap. Marin was the guest of honor. Her face was projected on screens flanking the stage, larger than life, airbrushed into beatific serenity. The text beneath her photo read, Marin Hale, a legacy of generosity. I stood near the back of the ballroom, clutching my clutch bag. Inside, folded into a tight square, was the email from the escrow officer confirming Marin's hidden investment in Cedar Ridge. I wasn't going to storm the stage. That was Marin's way. Loud, performative, messy. My way was logistics. My way was process. Earlier that afternoon, I had sent a courier to the office of Thomas Klein, the Foundation's legal counsel. The package contained copies of the split payment invoices from Lumina, the credit card records showing I had paid for the gala's drapes, and the check image showing Marin's donation coming from my joint account. I had included a simple note. I believe the Foundation may be unknowingly party to financial structuring and fraud. I am providing this for your internal review before I take further legal action. I saw Thomas Klein now. He was standing near the stage, whispering to the board chair, a formidable woman named Eleanor. They weren't looking at the crowd. They were looking at Marin. Marin was at table 1, center stage. She was wearing a silver gown that shimmered under the lights. She was laughing, her head thrown back, holding court. She looked invincible, but I knew the signs. I saw the way her eyes darted to the side of the room every few seconds. I saw the way her hand gripped her wineglass, knuckles white. She was terrified. She knew the mediation settlement had stripped her of her cash, but she thought her reputation was still intact. She thought she could still charm her way through this night. The lights dimmed. The program began. I stayed in the shadows. I watched as the executive director took the podium. He went through the standard welcome, the thank you to the sponsors, then came the moment, and now, he said, his voice booming through the speakers, we come to our Community Pillar Award. Usually, we present a video tribute at this time. He paused. He looked down at his notes. He adjusted his glasses. However, he said, the room going deadly silent, due to a slight change in the program, we are going to pause for a brief 10-minute intermission before the main presentation. Please, enjoy the dessert service. A ripple of confusion went through the room. Intermissions didn't happen in the middle of an award segment. I watched Marin. Her smile froze. She looked around, confused. She caught the eye of the board chair, Eleanor, who was walking purposefully toward her table. Eleanor leaned down and whispered something in Marin's ear. Marin's face went slack. The color drained out of her cheeks so fast she looked like a statue. She stood up, her napkin fluttering to the floor. She tried to maintain her composure, smoothing her dress, but her movements were jerky, mechanical. Eleanor gestured toward a side door. Marin followed her, walking stiffly. I felt a hand on my elbow. Ms. Wright? I turned. It was Thomas Klein, the lawyer. Could you please come with me? He asked quietly. I nodded. We walked to a small conference room off the main corridor. Inside, Marin was standing by the window, her back to the room. Eleanor was sitting at the head of the table, looking grim. Thomas closed the door. The sound of the gala, the clinking silverware, the murmur of 300 confused donors was cut off instantly. Marin turned around. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed into slits. You, she whispered, you did this. I sat down. I placed my clutch on the table. I provided documentation. I said calmly, that is all. Eleanor looked at me. Ms. Wright, your evidence suggests that the funds for the gala production, funds we wired to Hale Event Collective, were not used to pay the vendors. Is that correct? That is correct. I said, Marin used my personal credit cards to pay the vendors. She structured the payments into amounts under $5,000 to avoid your counter-signature requirements. Marin stepped forward. That is a lie. It was cash flow management. I was going to reimburse her. The foundation got the event it paid for. Didn't it? The drapes are up. The lights are on. Who cares which account paid for them? We care. Marin, Eleanor said, her voice like ice, because we are a 501c3, and because we wired you $50,000. If you didn't use that money for the vendors, where is it? Marin opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at me. Her eyes were pleading now. I pulled the piece of paper from my bag, the one I had been saving. It is in Cedar Ridge, I said. I slid the email across the table to Eleanor. She used the foundation's production budget to fund a buy-in for the Cedar Ridge Development Partnership. I explained. She isn't just buying a condo. She is trying to become a developer. She used your money, and my money, to leverage a position in a commercial real estate deal. Eleanor picked up the paper. She read it. She handed it to Thomas. Thomas looked at Marin. Is this true? He asked. Marin sank into a chair. She looked small. The silver dress, so glamorous under the stage lights, looked ridiculous in the harsh fluorescent glare of the conference room. It was an investment, she whispered. I was going to pay it back. The project is going to triple in value. I was going to donate the profits to the foundation. I was doing it for us. For us? I asked. For the family, Marin cried, her voice cracking. For the name. Do you know what it is like, Stella? To be the one everyone looks at? To be the one who has to shine so bright that no one notices the cracks? Dad expected it. Mom expects it. You just exist. You go to work. You come home. You are safe. I have to be spectacular. She looked at me, tears cutting tracks through her heavy makeup. That night at the restaurant? The $50? I didn't do it to be mean. I did it because I was terrified. You were talking about your savings, about being stable, and I looked at you and I realized you were the successful one. You were the one with the real money, and I hated you for it. So I had to make you look small. I had to make you look like the child, so I could still be the star. The confession hung in the air. It wasn't an apology. It was an admission of envy so deep it had justified theft. She hadn't stolen from me because she was desperate. She had stolen from me because she couldn't stand the idea that I was okay without her. I looked at her. I felt a profound, exhausting pity. "You aren't a star." "Marin," I said softly, "you are just a thief in a nice dress." Eleanor stood up. "Marin, we are going to remove you from the program tonight. We will announce a clerical error. You will leave the building immediately. Tomorrow, the board will convene a special session to discuss the recovery of our funds and potential legal referrals." Marin looked up. Panicked. "Legal referrals? You mean police?" "Eleanor, please, I can fix this. I can sell the stake in Cedar Ridge. That is out of our hands," Eleanor said. "Please give your badge to Thomas." Marin unpinned the guest of honor badge from her dress. Her hands were trembling. She placed it on the table. She looked at me one last time. "You won," she whispered. "Are you happy?" I looked at the badge on the table. I didn't want to win. "Marin, I just wanted my sister back. But she never existed. Did she?" Marin didn't answer. She turned and walked out the side door, into the alley, alone. I didn't stay for the rest of the gala. I walked out through the lobby, past the confused guests who were whispering about the sudden change in the program. "Did you hear?" Marin Hale left. Something about an audit. I heard she was escorted out. The rumors were already starting. The social power Marin had carefully cultivated for a decade was dissolving in real time. By morning, she would be a pariah. I stepped outside. The air in Dawson Harbor was biting cold, smelling of salt and exhaust. I took a deep breath. It was over. I ran the numbers in my head as I walked to my car. The vendor refunds. $24,000. The mediation settlement. Car, furniture, investments. $350,000. The recovered cash from the joint account. $800. The pending recovery of the Cedar Ridge deposit, which the foundation would likely seize, but which would credit against Marin's debt to me in the final accounting. $50,000. Total recovered. $424,800. Plus the legal fees Marin would be forced to pay. I had effectively taken back $480,000. I had done it without screaming. I had done it without a viral Facebook post. I had done it with spreadsheets, phone calls, and the relentless application of pressure. I saw David waiting by my car. He had driven separately to meet me, knowing I might need an escape. He was leaning against the hood, his hands in his pockets. He looked solid, real. "Is it done?" he asked as I approached. I nodded. "It is done. She is gone. The board knows everything." He pulled me into a hug. I buried my face in his coat. It smelled of wool and rain. "How do you feel?" he asked. I thought about it. I searched for the feeling of triumph, of victory. It wasn't there. "I feel light," I said, like I put down a heavy backpack I didn't know I was carrying. But I also felt cold. I had my money. I had my future. But I had lost my past. My memories of my sister, of my family, were all tainted now. Every birthday, every holiday, every generous gift Marin had ever given me. It was all a lie. It was all funded by my own labor. "What do you want to do?" David asked. "Go get a drink? Go home?" I looked at the skyline of Dawson Harbor. "I want to go home," I said. "I want to balance my checkbook. And then I want to sleep for a week." We drove home in silence. When we got to my apartment, I sat down at my desk one last time. I wanted to close the file. I wanted to move the folder labeled The Audit into the archive drive. I opened my laptop. There was a new email in my inbox. The sender was Legal Department. Cedar Ridge Development Partners. My heart skipped a beat. Had Marin told them? I opened the email. "Dear Ms. Wright, we are contacting you regarding the partnership interest held in the name of Marin Hale, following a compliance review triggered by an inquiry from the Dawson Harbor Community Foundation. We have identified irregularities in the funding source for the initial capital contribution. Our records indicate that the wire transfer originated from an account linked to your name. Under our partnership bylaws, in cases where funds are proven to be misappropriated, the equity stake does not revert to the general fund. Instead, the constructive trust doctrine may apply. We are writing to inform you that as the source of the capital, you may have a claim to the equity position currently held by Ms. Hale. The current valuation of the Class B shares has appreciated significantly due to recent zoning approvals. Please contact us to discuss whether you wish to liquidate the position or assume the partnership interest in your own name. I stared at the screen. The $50,000 Marin had stolen, money I thought was gone, money I assumed the foundation would claw back, had grown. The zoning had been approved, the value had spiked. Marin had been right about one thing. It was a good investment, but she wasn't the investor. I was. I looked at the cursor blinking on the screen. I could sell it. I could take the cash, pay back the foundation for their portion of the mess, and keep the profit. It would be the final irony, profiting from Marin's greed. Or, I could keep it. I could become the thing Marin pretended to be. I could be a partner in the biggest development in Dawson Harbor, not because I was flashy, not because I needed to be a star, but because I had paid for it. I looked at the reflection of my face in the dark screen. I looked different. The softness around my eyes was gone. My mouth was set in a firmer line. I wasn't the easy sister anymore. I wasn't the victim. I was Stella Wright, and I had a decision to make. I reached for the keyboard. 2. Legal Department, Cedar Ridge Development Partners. From Stella Wright. Subject, Partnership Interest, Unit 404. I am available to meet tomorrow morning at 9. Let's discuss the future. I hit send, then I closed the laptop, turned off the light, and walked into the quiet, paid for peace of my own life. Thank you for listening to At My Birthday Party, My Sister Humiliated Me Over $50. I took back $480,000 slowly. I hope you enjoyed this story of surgical revenge and reclaiming one's power. It's a reminder that sometimes the quietest moves are the most devastating. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed Stella's journey, please subscribe to Revenge Stories and share your thoughts in English. Your support helps us bring more of these stories to life.